It's Thursday, the 24th of April, 2025, and welcome to the Water Action Platform. Today's broadcast is a special one. It's all about health and safety. We're going to hear from a utility, a contractor, an investor, and a positively glorious array of technology companies, all sharing their experiences on this important topic. But before we get to that, thanks must be given to our sponsors, shown here. Now, as Joe noted last month, there are some new names, as we now include not just the Water Action Platform and Trial Reservoir supporters. Oh no, we also include those organisations that support the Exec Exchange. What's the Exec Exchange? Well, it is a weekly 15-minute podcast where leading executives from the water sector share their stories with me as their host to entertain, inspire and inform other water sector leaders from across the globe. The link is here. I'll share it again in the post-broadcast email. You really should watch it. It's brilliant. Now, the reason today's broadcast is focused on health and safety is because we were asked specifically by Kirsty McLaughlin, the head of health and safety at Scottish Water, if we would do this. We thought it was a marvellous idea. And a quick side note that if any of you have ideas for future themes, please share them. Now, as Kirsty mentioned it to us, the obvious thing to do is to go straight to her first to hear what things she's been doing at Scottish Water. Kirsty joined Scottish Water in 2008 as a management trainee and has, over the subsequent 16 years, held a variety of leadership roles. She took on the role of Head of Health and Safety in February 2024, about a year ago. And here, she shares some of the things that they've been doing. Kirsty, wonderful for you to join us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your experiences within Scottish Water around health and safety. Now, you've been in the role for a year. Let's start by talking about Scottish Water's health and safety record. What does it look like?
Thank you for having me, Pierce. So Scottish Water's health and safety performance aligns with the UK water industry for key health and safety performance measures, such as RIDDOR, which is the reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences, and our lost time accident rate. Of course, at Scottish Water, we believe that the safety, health and wellbeing of our people and everyone that we work with is fundamental to our success. Despite significant effort and progress on safety systems and ways of working, our incident frequency has plateaued and high potential incidents occur too often. Yeah. This is unacceptable. I care about our people and those who work on our behalf, and we want everyone to return home safe and healthy at the end of each working day.
And let's just make sure that the audience understand what we're saying there. In that it's a constant battle, trying to keep everyone fit and healthy and safe at work. And you've got to keep pushing the point home. And people, you get these moments where everything improves. But your point is that it's plateaued. You know, you're doing lots of things and you've got to a level, but it's how do you get to that next level up? How do you keep striving for better performance? That's the challenge that you're facing right now, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And recognising that, last year we launched a new industry collective, working together with our partners, our supply chain, to go beyond zero harm, aiming to create a safer industry and a safer Scotland. Okay, so and what's involved in that? What are the items that we could cling to that would tell us that story? So it includes a significant improvement plan, similar to what we've done before, but the key difference is how we work together. Scottish Water is the client, but really working more closely with our partners and supply chain as an industry collective.
Okay, and who are the partners?
Our partners are our alliance and delivery partners that we work with to deliver our capital investment programme.
So it's the contractors and the consultants and the engineers and Scottish Water staff. It's all the whole group.
Yes, the entire community.
Okay. So what advice would you give other utilities that are on this journey? Is there anything that you've seen over the last year in this post that you think, wow, that's a gem. We should be doing more of that. The industry should be doing more of that.
So I would say one one particular area that stood out for me and most certainly influenced the approach that we're taking recently was some time that we, Scottish Water, spent with UK Power Networks, who're ahead of us in their health and safety performance journey. And one of the most notable differentiators was how they work as one community with their partners and their supply chain. So that's as opposed to a typical client and contractor relationship when it comes to safety, health and well-being. That's certainly influenced our approach.
Just for any listeners who are outside the UK, UK Power Networks is, as the name implies, it's in the power and energy distribution sector. So you're taking some learning from other infrastructure businesses and bringing that into the water space and breaking that contractor-client relationship, which just doesn't work when it's about health and safety, because it's not just the health and safety of Scottish Water, it's the health and safety of all of your contractors as well.
Absolutely. And a really bold ambition and new approach for us, which means we're always looking to learn from other comparable companies that are ahead of us in their safety journey.
I like that. Well, that leads to my next question, which is there any advice or help that you'd like from other utilities? Bearing in mind this goes out around the world, is there any things that you're like, I really don't know what's happening here, or any information that you'd like to hear from other utilities?
One of the key dilemmas that we continually wrestle with is how can we create an environment where psychological safety is felt together with accountability, so that positively impacts how work gets done.
Okay, we're going to have to unpick that a bit. The psychological safety. So this is breaking down any. I immediately go to this is trying to stop people from feeling like they're in an environment where they're being bullied or forced to do something that they're not comfortable with. Is that correct? Yeah. So psychological safety for me is fostering a workplace culture where employees, but also going further than that now, our partners in supply chain that we work with feel safe to express their ideas, their concerns and their mistakes without fear of negative consequences. Nice. It goes right to the heart of the values and vision of the organisation as well, doesn't it? That sort of thing. Brilliant. Is there, Kirsty, it's been wonderful to spend time with you. Is there anything else you want to share? Another area of help that we would be really keen to work with others on is what more can we do to create safer working environments for our people, whilst further embracing the use of technology. So bringing this to life a little bit more, for example, how could we do more to design out risk? So rather than putting people in high risk situations, for example, working in confined spaces, working at height, how can we do more at the beginning of our projects to consider what we can do to not put our people in that position? That is a great positioning statement for what's coming later in the broadcast, which are some technology showcases on some health and safety related technologies. Kirsty, thank you very much for your time. It's been wonderful to speak with you. I wish you the very best. Thanks for having me. Now, after that recording, I spoke to Kirsty and she shared details of some of the other initiatives that Scottish Water had done prior to her taking on the role. She'd been reticent to share them in case it looked like she was taking credit, but they're so important that I think you need to hear about them. And there are 3 initiatives in particular that are worth raising. The first one is fatigue management. Now, as we all know, it's become common practice within many utilities to work extremely long, unsociable hours. Arguably, running a 24/7 business providing a critical public service demands this. But in 2020, Scottish Water recognised the impact that fatigue was having on performance, slowing reaction times and reducing attention. So they implemented an employee fatigue app that conducts fatigue assessments. They believe they were the first water company in Europe to use this, and encouragingly, employee feedback's been very positive. The second initiative they did was they launched a digital dynamic risk assessment called Take 5. Now this encourages teams to pause and think about safety prior to taking on a task. It was introduced alongside the concept that no task is so important that we cannot take the time to do it safely. And since the launch of Take 5, over 1 million dynamic risk assessments have been completed within Scottish Water. And examples of changes that have been made because of it include lifting operations being stopped due to high winds and tasks being postponed due to unsafe access roads because of heavy snowfall, the sort of thing you get in Scotland. And the third thing they did that I wanted to share with you was on how they've digitised contractor access onto Scottish Water sites. And they've taken the learning here from the oil and gas sector, where they've implemented something called access control. It's a permit to work initiative which covers the more than 5,000 people that are employed by Scottish Water and the 6,000 or so assets that they have under their control. Now, initiatives like this are supremely important, and I thank Kirsty for sharing them. And of course, if you have similar examples, please let us know. Now, following that conversation with Kirsty, I wanted to talk to someone at a contracting business as opposed to a utility. So with this in mind, I spoke to Mitchell Sace, the SHEC manager at NPure. Now, NPure operate all around the world delivering water and wastewater projects, and Mitchell has a long and rich background in contracting. So his perspective on what are the key risks and how can they best be mitigated was particularly relevant. Mitch, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Pleasure to be here, Piers. Thank you.
Now, we're talking to you because we've just heard from Kirsty at Scottish Water about some of the challenges they have in a utility. And you work in a contracting business, and contracting businesses have very different health and safety challenges to utilities. So let's start by telling me a little bit about NPure, the business you work for.
Yeah, so NPure are a multidisciplined water and wastewater engineering specialist. We deliver projects throughout the world, whether it be large-scale wastewater projects down to small little kiosks. We sort of cover everything, and we're an in-house design and build contractor. So by that I mean we, from cradle to grave, from concept to commissioning, that's our bag.
You've got engineers sitting in a design office, and you've got site operators out on site pouring concrete and things like that.
Exactly that.
Now, your role as SHEC manager, what are the things that keep you awake at night? What are the things that you're having to wrestle with that might be those of water utilities themselves?
It's an interesting point you make, and I think the industry is very diverse for those of us that are in it. There's a lot of operational risk, your typical lifting, temporary works, control of mechanical and electrical systems. But it comes back to me personally, I sort of like to focus on the design element and where we can engineer risk away. I don't think the industry does enough on that. I think the clients, the water companies themselves, have quite a lot of hold on this, if you like, because the pre-construction information we get is often very sketchy or, shall we say, scarce. So we're not afforded, a full risk profile of which to sort of take forward into our design, into our control, and then to really appreciate the risk that is there to our people.
So let me just make sure we've captured that point. So what you're saying is that there is the opportunity to design out a lot of the risk, but your ability to do that in the most effective way is hampered because you're sometimes not provided with all the necessary information that you would like to have to be able to do that. So why don't you get that information?
Sometimes it's because things have been lost over the years. Record keeping wasn't necessarily prioritised in years gone by as it is now. And also, I think, there's that many different people involved in a project this day and age, the people, move on, move around. And I think that sort of definitely contributes to, a lack of information passage or lack of understanding between the teams. And as I said, sort of at the outset, really, my real sort of how can the industry improve is to focus on design. We talk about designing for safety, and I'm sure most of the water companies have got their own various forums with their partners, but I still don't think we see enough output of that to say, right, how can we design out this risk? How can we engineer out this risk? And I think it's a fine balance because obviously, there's a capital expenditure that the water companies have to manage. But if we're talking about a reduced risk for the operators during the construction, surely that's got to carry some weight and got to be considered in the design phase.
Got it. All right. What advice would you give captured the point about early design. What's the best practice bit that you've seen inside NPO that you could share with other contractors or other people working in the water sector?
I think for me, the biggest thing is educating your teams to the point where if they're not sure, they will stop. We don't just proceed, gung-ho with a design, or we say, right, that's ready to go to site now. It's what we call approved for construction. Until we're satisfied, we don't progress through that gate. We have a hard control gate that says, right, are we happy with everything? Have we reduced the risk as far as reasonably practicable? And if we don't have all the information to pass that gate, we don't.
And
yes.
That's interesting because that's a cultural thing. That's a cultural and leadership thing. It's empowering people to be able to say, I'm not safe. We are stopping this. And that's whether they're a graduate on site or a 50 years experienced person.
Yeah, I mean, we've developed resurrected, I should say, the no accident behaviour culture program within the business, and it's really been used to drive that behavioural change, that sort of outside the box thinking, but also given our people the empowerment to say, right, we're not happy with this, we're stopping until we got the right justification, clarification, and we can proceed safely.
Wonderful. Mitch, thank you for taking the time to join us today. I wish you the very best.
It's been a pleasure, Piers. Thank you very much.
So some really interesting points there for us to take away, in particular around the provision of data early to enable contractors to design out risk before any site work even begins. Thanks again for sharing, Mitch. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to showcase 3 technologies which have a particular health and safety application. But before we do that, I thought it might be interesting to get an investor perspective. How do investors feel about health and safety? When they're looking at a new investment, do they even consider it? And if so, where does it rank in their prioritization? And what do the funders behind the investment professionals think? Well, to answer some of these questions, I connected with Liza Faber, head of water investments at the Netherlands-based investment firm Pure Terra Ventures. Now, Pure Terra Ventures has a particular interest in water and has recently launched its new fund. Liza, thank you for joining me today. So we're talking about health and safety and the perspective from an investor. Tell me, what does Pure Terra Ventures look at? Does health and safety even come up when you're doing your due diligence on new tech companies?
Absolutely. We really think that health and safety is incredibly important, especially in the water space. We understand that that's absolutely paramount for the customers that we work for.
But I get that you might like it because of the product. If a tech company's got a product that does health and safety, but what about the actual company themselves? Do you look at the health and safety record of the investee company?
Absolutely. We see health and safety as a risk. So as part of our analysis of the company, we make sure that we are understanding kind of the health and safety risks, both from the product side as well as within the company itself and how they operate.
Good. That's good. Now, I know that within your portfolio, you've got a couple of companies that are specifically around environmental and sort of personal health. Tell me a little bit about those.
Yeah, great. So we have 3 companies that are specifically around the health and safety space. The first is Alona, and they do environmental monitoring for improving human conditions, both within the built environment as well as outside in the natural world. And then we also have Diomedex, who is doing biological monitoring at the lab scale and really accelerating the results of that biological monitoring for water utilities and other kind of water monitoring users. And that allows those utilities and users to be more reactive and to understand the risks that are taking place, whether there's E. coli or Legionella, and making sure that they can be responsive in a really appropriate period of time. And then we also have SIGA, which is a really unique one because they're focused on cybersecurity of water assets. And the idea is that, water assets are incredibly paramount for the public. And we want to make sure, and SIGA really helps make sure that there's no risk associated with those, coming under attack or having any security issues. And they can kind of foresee those problems and help with reaction time there as well.
Excellent. And the reason I wanted you to do those was because that does draw quite a nice picture of the different bits of the environment, the health and safety world that you're touching on. It's not just about the individual, it's also about the environment they work in. And now, for people who aren't familiar, the way funds like yours work is you have investors, limited partners, LPs they're called, who give you money, and then you have to report back to them on a fairly regular basis. Does health and safety feature in your reporting back to them? Does it matter to them?
Yes, it does. And especially when we think of like ESG as a whole, which is often a reporting requirement for our LPs, as part of governance, that safety piece is absolutely built in. And so this is part of like what we look at both in our due diligence, because we know we have to report on it, but also something that we see as kind of a basic value of both our LPs as well as us as a fund.
So there you have it. Investors do consider health and safety, both the levels in the investee company and the type of service that they offer. And the investment firms behind the funds, the LPs or limited partners, also monitor health and safety performance as part of their quarterly metrics. Now, coming up next, we are excited to share highlights from ISLE's recent Tech Demo Day that was focused on workplace safety innovations and which we ran alongside WASA, the Water Services Association of Australia. Now, you're about to see 3 cutting-edge technologies, each addressing critical safety challenge. First, there is Exact Tools' revolutionary pipe cutting system from Plumboss that's making maintenance work safer and more efficient. Next, there's Blackline Safety's solution for lone workers, featuring wearable monitorers and gas detection systems. And finally, we have a fascinating case study on Area 9's adaptive learning platform that's transforming safety training across the Australian water sector with personalised AI-driven approaches. These technologies represent the best-in-class solutions that were identified through WASA's Research, Development and Innovation Programme. So let's take a look.
Today I'll be presenting on our Plumboss Exact Cut pipe cutting machines. Very excited to go over the range that we have and how it can benefit the water services industry. So Exact Cut machines are a little bit different to traditional pipe cutting methods. They're a patented technology where you have some gripper arms that actually secure the pipe secure the machine onto the pipe, and then a saw blade goes and cuts the pipe. The blade is completely contained within the blade guard. There's no risk of exposure to the blade. You have a plunge lock, so once the machine is in the process of cutting, it is locked in place. And then you have your, this is quite unique to the Exact Cuts, is on the gripper arms, there are some one-directional ratchet wheels, so the machine is only able to progress in the direction of the cut, and then the gripper wheels actually lock in the other direction so that you can pull the pipe towards yourself. More onto the machines, particularly good for water service lines, is our Pro range of machines. So there's 3 different size models available, the 220, 360 and 460. Each model has, their own size range of pipes that they're able to cut. And what's unique about the Pro range is they actually have the ability to cut and bevel pipe as well. So they can cut and bevel your plastic pipes, your PVC, and they can cut and bevel your ductile pipes for your rubber ring joints. So that's quite unique about the Pro machines, and is a real big advantage to the Exact Cut method in comparison to traditional cutting methods. Some other important things to mention with cost benefits. Some things are a bit more intangible, such as safety. The Exact Cut machines have proven themselves to be a far safer method of cutting pipe than your traditional methods, and the cost of one incident on a project and even on a company as a whole can sum up to quite a large number.
Okay, so our second technology presentation is from a company called Blackline Safety, who are originally based in Canada but now a global company with locations across Australia and New Zealand. So it's a wearable device for lone worker safety with real-time location tracking, fall detection and gas monitoring in remote or hazardous environments.
This is just a snapshot of the product range. We make single gas, we make lone worker devices, we make area monitors, and then, as I said, there's the two screens that are pictured there. And we've worked very tirelessly in the last 15 years to be at the forefront of the connected safety world in terms of lone worker monitoring and also gas detection. And we are revolutionising the way that gas detection, lone worker and gas detection is delivered to the marketplace to our customers. In essence, we have a cloud connected ecosystem. We're slightly different than everybody else in the fact that they have gas monitors, if you like, that smell gas, go beep. And Blackline have the connected wearables and the connected area monitors. They go up to the Blackline Live portal. You have reporting and analytics. You have 24/7 live monitoring. And all of that is tied together through the Blackline Live portal and our analytics service. And when we look at these devices, they're not just a lone worker device or a gas detector. You can look at them and go, so in each device, the G7, the EXO, for example, fall detection. So if I take a trip, it'll trigger an alarm and someone will know that I've fallen over. And then the respondent, if I get up or if I'm, trip and break a leg, for example, you already know what you need to do from an alert response. This is a typical scenario from when the H2S leak is detected. It goes through, Blackline gets the alarm within a second, a couple of seconds, 1 second that the person in the alarm gets the alarm. Within 2 seconds, Blackline receives the alert. 31 seconds, the live monitoring call calls the device. The device is not responsive. After a minute, everyone's evacuated. And then a minute 45, the responders prepare, and within 4 minutes, the worker's rescued.
Global company in what's called adaptive learning. So that's machine AI. We've been in it for 14 years and we have over 40 million learners. We work across a range of industries, courses from critical risk to induction to leadership. The productivity is quite profound with Rhapsode, which is the adaptive learning platform. When we compare standard training to the new version in Rhapsode, the adaptive platform, we typically save between 40 and 50% in time. Our partnership with WASA started with a proof of concept with the Working from Heights Association in a falls prevention program where we ran that across 10 organisations. And from there, we're now developing as a pathway with the Steering Co a range of critical risk courses, including these that are to be released, Lotto and so forth, and then a really interesting work stream into psychosocial hazards and risk. So how does it work? So what you're seeing here is a screenshot of how we build the courses in Rhapsode. Really easy and efficient ways for us to create courses. You're seeing here this is a lockout tagout course. So from left to right, really granular learning objectives. We build questions or probes on the right that test the learner's competency. So micro-learning, and what the algorithm is doing is it's measuring and testing and teaching and adjusting in real time. So really behaving like a personal teacher. So you end up with learner pathways like this. Almost impossible to replicate, but the algorithm adjusts and teaches. So these are those learning objectives that you saw and how that one learner going through a Working from Heights course has been personally taught through. And then the final aspect is data. So this shining a light in the corner. Now, this is 500 learners that have gone through the course, and Rhapsode is measuring and helping and taking about 20 data points per minute. So for group leaders, this type of data is invaluable because it says, what was the underlying level of knowledge of this group coming into the course? What was the level of unconscious incompetence? And it's this middle section there where you see the improvement that Rhapsode takes those cohort to 100% or competency. Our WASA partnership is really evolving. As I mentioned, we've got a steering committee that's made up of L&D and safety people, and they're providing a pathway of courses. we can take that course like lockout, tagout, and adapt it for organisations large and small within all the networks here. And WASA have been very generous. This is open to all organisations, and we're working on an area around psychosocial hazards. So really important that we're able to share that partnership with the broader water industry through facilitations like this.
You know, what's particularly exciting is how those solutions emerged from WASA's structured innovation program. That process began with identifying the key challenges, doing a global tech scan, and then running collaborative workshops with water utilities across Australia and New Zealand. The demo day that we just glimpsed represents the culmination of that process, where the top techs were presented to WASA members. Now, the most promising solutions will, fingers crossed, now move forward to collaborative trials, allowing the utilities to test those innovations in real-world conditions before wider implementation. And this collaborative approach, at the risk of stating the obvious, ensures that safety solutions are thoroughly vetted and truly meet the needs of the water sector. It's a model that we should all be adopting with our local utilities. Now, with that, we come to the end of this month's broadcast, and I thank our sponsors shown here once again. The next broadcast will be on Thursday, the 22nd of May at the usual times. Now, it's going to be hosted by Dr. Joe Burgess, and this time it's all about space. In particular, how would a colony on the moon deal with the water challenge? It's going to be a cracker. Until then, keep asking questions, keep sharing, and keep safe.